What's up, everybody? Ryan and Greg here, and we are diving into the highly anticipated second season of Jordan Peele's The Twilight Zone. We're going to break down the plot of every episode, give you some Easter eggs and references that we noticed, and break down our impressions.
Now, before we do that, of course, warning, spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, get out of here, go watch it, and then come on back here. Now let's do this. Let's break down Downtime. Okay, so the synopsis for this episode reads, after a recent promotion to hotel manager, Michelle, played by Morena Baccarin, feels like she's on top of the world. But any cause for celebration is short-lived when the nature of her reality is called into question. Okay, so we meet Michelle, who apparently has been working her entire life for this moment, for this big meeting where she's going to become now the manager of this prominent, looks like 5-star hotel. You could tell something weird's about to happen when she asked him, like, what are you going to do with now that you're retired, what are you going to do with your time? And he tells her that he's going to become either like I think he says a CEO or a rock star. Okay, this is it's a little strange, but she thinks nothing of it. She's like, okay, cool, right on.
Yeah, that's bizarre. As CEO as a post-career?
Yeah, and then he gives this weird line about, you picked the perfect life.
You really picked the right life.
It's also sort of conspicuous in hindsight, the how her entire backstory is preparing for this job. Like, we know once we get further on why that would be, but like kind of like maybe should have been another sort of first indication.
Now, before we get anything revealed behind the curtains, Michelle immediately takes on her new job as the boss of the hotel, and we meet this just horrible guest who want a fourth window. They're upset because there's 3 windows to their suite, and they wanted 4. Okay.
The brochure said there would be 4. I also want to note that she walks out of that meeting where she gets the job, and like everybody's ready to like celebrate for her, and as weird as that is, the whole episode up to this point is like a little bit dreamlike, but also very positive in a way that we don't always get from the Twilight Zone.
Everything's going just fine for her, and all of a sudden she gets a major headache. And then when she comes to, we see this giant metallic orb that's just like hanging out outside. Cool. Here we go. Something's happening.
Yeah, this is the show me what you got moment.
Show me what you got. I want to see what you got.
Now, stepping outside, everyone in town's looking up at that orb, and you can see people start to, like they're taking a big, deep breath, and then they're gone. It's like they fade out into this thing. I love the set direction and how they shot this, because immediately I'm just thinking of Carpenter films. I'm thinking of Body Snatchers. It's a great shot.
It's totally like a Body Snatchers moment. Or like, yeah, Carpenter, it's got like a They Live quality, like this thing of the main character is the only one who is not a part of this, and it's super cool. After going from the city center to the suburbs and past everybody who is just staring up at the orb, she gets home and she goes to find her partner, Carl, who appears to be just getting out of the shower and, like, thank goodness, is not like everybody else. Hasn't been zombified, isn't staring up at the sky.
Not yet.
But there's another problem with Carl.
Yes, it's actually Donnie, and played by Coleman Domingo. It's a little. I love these little like kind of cameos they have. It's just quick, where he informs her like this is where we get the real like meat of the episode. This is where at this point we can grasp the situation that Michelle's in. It's simulation. At this point, now, okay, cool. She just hasn't got the memo yet, or something weird's going on with her, but everyone else here knows that what's the deal, and this is the Truman Show, basically, and hey, we're just going to head out for a minute for maintenance.
I think that this sequence was actually kind of scary because she's been established as so clearly isolated and alone in this circumstance that even when her partner turns out to be somebody else, I still felt the like sympathy of not wanting him to leave, even though there was still the problem of it's somebody else.
No, girl, no.
And then we get 2 skateboarders who are, one of them's, I think, titled Afropunk in the credits.
Right. So the skater punks who turn out to be the first level of customer service sort of realize that the situation is a little bit unprecedented. They personally haven't had to deal with somebody who's in Michelle's particular circumstance. And the solution to that problem is show the promotional video.
Hello, Dreamer, and thank you for purchasing the Sleepaway package, the newest in identity tourism. I'm Kelly Fox, and I'm going to orient you in how it all works.
And this is where we learn that it's Sleepaway is the program that everyone's in right now, and it's an alternate reality where it takes place during in REM sleep. It takes place during REM sleep, so you live your normal day, and you go to bed, and you just pop on one of those Sleepaway Whipple devices to your head, and you go to sleep, and then you wake up in this alternate reality. Now, unfortunately for Michelle, she finds out that that headache she had was actually a real-life heart attack by her host. And it seems like all they want to do is really shut her off, hard reset, and then see if everything works out that way. And of course, Michelle's like, no, thank you.
Right. Like, the idea is that once they deal with the medical problem for her host, that they can just more or less restart her program. And
Yikes.
Everything will go back to normal, before realizing that her host's situation was actually fatal. The Sleepaway video didn't really jog her memory or put her at ease, especially not the glitching television or their ability to erase the knife she had in her hand. But now they have to move to the next level of dealing with the problem, and that is to bring in her emergency contact.
Phineas's wife, Ellen.
When she first shows up, for me, it was like, hell no. Like, this is definitely where, if you're in this situation,
The fix is in.
You are like backing out of the room. But then it does actually turn kind of heartwarming.
I love the way they portrayed the scene and how it ends with immediately Ellen looks up at that beam, at that giant orb, and she's gone. But Michelle sticks around.
Yeah, she's like, I ain't doing that yet.
Sorry. I can't.
Would you? I would not. I would have shades on like They Live at this point, walking through town.
I think, yeah. I mean, that's what's great about it, because the moment is actually kind of emotionally compelling, and you could imagine like giving in at that point and just saying like, all right.
Now, as Michelle makes her way back to the hotel, we hear like the maintenance crew, they said they were going to send out birds to find her. And sure enough, we find out those birds are just pigeons. Now, that pigeon at the window scene, it's subtle and it's goofy, but I absolutely love it because it's straight up, it's like a body snatcher scene with a pigeon.
Yeah, it fits perfectly into the simulation genre, where there's always something that is not what it seems. And that's often some kind of means of surveillance within the simulation, right?
Now, she ends up on the hotel roof where we meet another character who's the next stage, who's the next level in customer service to come help out this situation, played by Tony Hale. Now, he admits to Michelle that Finn, her actual host, passed away 45 minutes prior to Downtime. So he does recommend to her to stay inside the app. The only thing he needs from her is a form just for her to sign to clear them of anything that happens. Michelle's left with the ultimate choice, which is to continue to play along and live in this dream world, or wake up and essentially, cease to exist forever.
It's this heavy existential moment for the character. In bringing it around to the customer service story, they managed to do that without cheapening the weight of that moment.
Now, Michelle decides to stay, of course, even though we do get a countdown from like 3, 2, 1. But with that said, Michelle stays in the simulation, and it ends with Ellen becoming the new guest of the hotel. So kind of, we're getting a little bit of a happy ending here, and I'm all for it.
And there's actually been a suggestion at 1 or 2 points in the episode that maybe Finn is in her somewhere. For Michelle, she was told by Tony Hale's character that, the rule is that you have to stay in character. And so Ellen is even like kind of a comforting sight, because she's somebody who knows like her secret, basically. They have something that they share together that's really important. All right, Greg, let's move on to the things we noticed and Easter eggs.
Now, to start things off, I just want to go with the hotel name itself, Faringham Hotel. Now, this is probably a stretch, or maybe it's Jordan Peele's love for Doctor Who, because Farringham is the name of a town for the for David Tennant's season, where he hides in that town with Martha under the disguise of John Smith. So I can see this being where the inspiration for the name may have come from, but I don't know. So I just want to throw that in here just in case. But Farringham is also in a Doctor Who episode, and I love bringing up Doctor Who whenever I can, so I'm going to leave this here.
That's totally fair.
The Time Lord has such adventures. But he could never have a life like that.
And yet I could.
And next up, we got an actual shout out to a future episode for this season. We see this a few times in Black Mirror as well, where a character, this time I think it was Carl or Donnie, says this.
Okay, well, I'm gonna order some dinner and watch Ovation myself then.
So we're actually going to see the show Ovation just a little bit further down the road. Okay, so next up we actually have a couple of references to not just classic Twilight Zone, but last season of Twilight Zone. And the first one is the Busy Bee Diner. We see the cup held by the police officer early in the episode, and then in two separate scenes downtown, we see the brick and mortar location of the Busy Bee Diner. This is a nod to the classic episode Nick of Time. In that episode, the Busy Bee Diner is where newlyweds Don and Pat Carter find the Little Devil fortune teller machine.
Listen to me.
No, you listen to me. This machine is predicting our future. Do you think I could just walk away from it?
Next up, we see Whipple again, which is from the classic episode from season 5, The Brain Center at Whipple's, which featured a factory owner determined to replace men with machines.
Now, when it comes to Sleepaway, we actually saw this teased in the episode prior in Meet in the Middle. Now, in that episode, at the very end on the TV screen, you can see an ad for it, the same one that we see in this episode played to Michelle.
Right, so we're definitely seeing a bit more universe building this season. Now, I got two more sort of references in here that aren't especially substantiated, but I think they're a little bit close. One is the scene where Ellen first comes in as the emergency contact and the two customer service skater guys are in the room is super reminiscent of the scene in Total Recall, the Paul Verhoeven film with Arnold Schwarzenegger, adaptation of Philip K. Dick. And it's in fact the most Philip K. Dick scene in the movie, where Sharon Stone is there to convince him that he's suffered a mental break, he is not who he thinks he is, she is his loving wife, and he needs to come home. And it's very much the same scene. So I think that's a good little tip of the hat to Total Recall. The next thing is, it's not so much a shore reference, but there's a trope to simulation stories where there are flaws in the simulation. There's always something that doesn't work, like the cat in the Matrix, or even the light that falls from the sky in the Truman Show. There's always something that's off. And this one actually in particular reminded me a lot of Dark City, because in Dark City, the whole city sleeps while the strangers are changing the shape of things and manipulating things. And in Dark City, the main character is the only person who knows that it's happening and can see it happening, and is actually there to see the changes taking place. And that moment where she's walking down the street and the car is like glitching out totally reminds me of that sort of thing.
Okay, let's jump into overall thoughts here, and I'll kick it off, and I'll just say right at the beginning, it's an alternate reality story and a simulation. We've seen this a million times now. Again, so we have from Tron to The Matrix to even Amazon's new series, Upload. So that's one of the reasons why this doesn't really stand out the pack. But with that said, I think this episode was great. It's very smart. The performances are well done, even though they're short, and which is, again, another good thing about this episode. It comes in at 32 minutes. The edit, I think, is one of the best they've had so far. They're really, really nailing their editing process here for this season. If they can keep it around this range, I'm all for it. The subtle realism here is just, it hits a note really well. And I saw it again, if I watched like Amazon's Upload, if you've seen that, you'll know how far they go in one direction compared to this episode, where just the things on customer service, and you can see how this would actually play out in real life. And that's what makes it so frightening.
I'm actually totally with you there, because one of the things I think is so cool is that we've seen the simulation story or the simulation genre played out so much that this one is able to almost take a break from what that genre normally focuses on. Something I admire about the emotional maturity of this episode is that Michelle's character is so strong and her personal existential crisis so compelling that the show can focus on that conflict without needing to address head-on the broader technocratic themes that might be the province of a different sci-fi show telling a similar story. Rather than seek a commentary on tech's slippery slope, Peele & Co. used the space to recognize imposter syndrome and the social challenges of agency that professional women face everywhere. I also just like the tone of the episode. For everything scary about it, it's not a violent or malevolent circumstance. And the customer service role reversal moment with Tony Hale is almost heartwarming and consistent with the character's journey, instead of leaving us with a cynical footnote about capitalism or the commodification of imagination. Let us know down in the comments what you thought of this episode of The Twilight Zone, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already.
And we'll be back here with the next breakdown very soon. See you guys then. Bye-bye.